Hi, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to a deep dive from Westferry Times. I'm your host, Emily, and today we're going to unpack something really significant. That's the UK's recent, much stronger condemnation of the escalating conflict in Gaza. And with us to help make sense of it all is a senior fellow at the Institute for International Affairs. Welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So, for you listening in, our mission today is, well, to cut through the noise a bit. We want to really understand what's driving this change in the UK's position, what actions they've actually taken, and, what the wider implications might be. We're drawing on our own recent discussion in the Westferry Times, naturally, but also reporting from places like AP News, Reddit discussions, The Times, Reuters, Morning Star, The Independent, The Guardian, Wikipedia, and direct info from gov.uk, too.
Okay, let's dive right in. The Prime Minister, Starmer, he uses some incredibly strong words. Abhorrent, monstrous,
Yeah.
describing Israel's actions. Based on what we've seen from, say, the Westferry Times discussion and AP News, what seems to be the biggest factor behind this rhetorical shift? Well, it seems like a convergence of pressures, really. But I think the sheer scale of the humanitarian crisis appears to be the most immediate trigger. We're seeing reports indicating over 53,000 Palestinian deaths. That plus the escalating suffering, it just seems to have forced a much, much firmer line from the UK government.
That figure, 53,000 deaths, it's staggering. And it certainly feels like a break from how the UK might have approached this historically. Could you maybe elaborate a bit on that historical context?
Sure. If you look back at UK foreign policy in the region, historically there's often been maybe an emphasis on Israel's right to self-defense.
Yeah.
A frame within broader regional security issues. The UK often seem to lean towards understanding Israel's security viewpoint. But the intensity of this current conflict, how long it's gone on, and these just catastrophic humanitarian outcomes, it looks like it reached a point where the UK felt it just had to condemn things much more strongly.
Yeah.
So it's really a shift in emphasis, putting that humanitarian impact front and center.
Right. And it hasn't just been words, has it? We've seen actual actions, things like suspending the free trade talks with Israel, putting sanctions on some West Bank settlers. These trade talks, they were already happening, weren't they? What sort of things were being discussed, just so we understand what's potentially on hold now?
That's right, yes. Those talks were ongoing. The idea was, benefits for both sides, lower tariffs, better market access in different sectors. So suspending them, that sends a pretty powerful diplomatic message. It's basically freezing potential economic gains Israel might have hoped for from a closer UK relationship. It signals serious displeasure with what's happening.
Okay. And the sanctions?
The sanctions on the settlers, those are more specific. They're aimed at holding certain people and groups accountable for, well, violence and settlement expansion. These target activities widely seen as illegal under international law building settlements in occupied territory, the violence linked to it. It's a more focused kind of pressure on particular actors on the ground.
It definitely sounds like more than just talk. But I guess the big question is, will any of this actually, change anything, policy-wise or on the ground?
And that really is the crucial question, isn't it? How effective these things will be.
Hmm.
Well, it's uncertain. For them to have a really big impact, you'd likely need a coordinated international push. If other major players did similar things, the pressure on Israel would definitely ramp up. But Israel's response is the big unknown. They might just resist the pressure, pointing to their own security needs.
Mm-hmm. And alongside these diplomatic sort of economic moves, the UK's also put money towards aid, right? Over £4 million for Gaza. How significant is that amount given the scale of the crisis?
Well, given the absolutely immense need in Gaza, I mean, basic supplies are desperately short. £4 million it's a substantial contribution. It shows the UK recognizes how dire things are, and it aims to get some vital support to civilians caught up in it all. In these situations, honestly, every bit of aid counts.
So you've got the direct aid and then these more assertive diplomatic steps. How does the UK's overall response, the tough words and these actions, stack up against other allies? We've heard statements from France, Canada, for instance.
Yeah, it's interesting to compare. While lots of countries, France and Canada included, have voiced really strong concerns, condemned the violence, actual concrete steps like halting trade talks or imposing these kinds of targeted sanctions, that's less common. So the UK deciding to do these things, it does position their response as, well, more assertive compared to many allies. It suggests maybe a greater willingness to apply more direct pressure.
Okay, let's bring it back home then. What about the politics within the UK itself? This tougher line from Starmer must be causing some debate. Our sources, like The Times, even looking at Reddit threads, show different views. What are the main arguments on either side?
Oh, absolutely. You're seeing a real spectrum of reaction. On one hand, there's likely a good chunk of the public and across the political scene who welcome this. They see the strong words and the actions as, morally necessary given the humanitarian situation, justified. But then on the other side, you definitely have people worried, worried about what this does to the UK's diplomatic ties with Israel. And crucially, does it hinder the UK's ability to be maybe a constructive player in any future peace talks? It's a really tricky balancing act for the government.
Definitely sounds like it. So, thinking ahead, what else could the UK potentially do to try and influence things, maybe contribute to a more lasting peace?
Well, looking longer term, for stability, the UK could potentially try to be more proactive, maybe push harder internationally for a renewed focus on a two-state solution, perhaps working with others to map out a clearer, more viable path forward. Another thing could be supporting international investigations, current or future ones, into the war crime allegations. That would reinforce the need for accountability. But ultimately, I think working closely with key international partners, having a unified approach, that's what would probably give the UK the most leverage.
It really highlights that incredibly fine line, doesn't it, between condemning actions you see as wrong, but also trying to keep enough diplomatic influence to actually help find a peaceful way out. James Thornton, thank you so much. That was really insightful, especially on such a complex and fast-moving issue.
My pleasure. It's important to talk through these things.
And thank you, all of you, for joining us for this deep dive into the UK's response to the situation in Gaza. We really encourage you to stay informed and, keep engaging with this critical topic. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, thinking about how interconnected global politics is. How might the UK's approach right now actually shape its role in resolving other international conflicts down the line, beyond just this one? Definitely something to mull over. Thank you for watching Westferry Times. Until our next deep dive, take